everyone, welcome to the last part of our game series. In this part, you will be creating your own levels. I will go over the level I created, however you do not have to follow it. We will discuss more about how you can use different existing games as inspirations for your current game. So let's take a look at the level I created. We'll slowly go over each section and I'll tell you why I made my choices. And you can use those ideas as inspirations for your own levels. Starting in our beginning zone, I have my player. I have a little arrow as a decorator, and I created this tree. This tree is a floor. The player cannot walk through it and will be forced to jump over it. Next part of the level, I created a little lake area. As you will see, I have several water grids across the level. That's because each of them requires a different surface level for the player to float adequately. I also changed the sprite to be a bit transparent so that when the player actually jumps into it, you can see them floating about. Next, I give the player a checkpoint and a challenge, showing them that if they die, they have a quick way to come back. So slowly we are introducing different mechanics that the player can use. We are also incentivizing them to follow a path using the coins. Then I introduce a heart. In case the player actually got hurt by the spikes, they can use it and will learn that hearts heal them. And then I created this long stream of water. This will allow the player to go up. If we look at this, you will see that my surface level is above here, so the player will actually be pulled up when they enter it. And it also allows us to introduce a new area. I created this treetop area, making it distinguishable from ground floor. All of these are floor, so the player cannot pass to them. We give a player another checkpoint, and we introduce them to flying enemies. Unlike the ones we were working with, I actually slowed them down to half their regular speed. So instead of being 5, there are 2. Now when the player makes their way through this level, they will jump down to a cloud. The clouds are actually part of the floating platforms, so the player will be able to jump through them, teaching them that they are platforms that you can jump up above. In this situation, I changed the surface arc from 180 to 135 because the player kept getting stuck on the edges of the clouds. Once the player does this, I created a 2-area section. I didn't put any coins in here because I didn't want the player to feel like they missed out on something since they can't come back up. But like many games such as Sonic, creating multiple pathways to the same area is a great way to encourage replayability. So if the player actually makes the jump, they will be faced with an edited flying enemy that will only go left and right. Or if they miss it and fall down, they actually get introduced to the walking enemies and the cave aesthetic that we will go into next. Once the player makes their way through here, we go down a big hole into a cave. There is a checkpoint and a coin right in the player's visibility. However, if they explore, they get rewarded with 5 coins. If you create optional areas, you always want to reward the player for exploring them, because if they walk into a dead end and there's nothing there, you are inadvertently teaching the player that there is no reason to explore and they should just go for the main objective, which can take out the fun of the game. Following along, we have a cave section. As you can see, I decided to create this weird aesthetic where there's holes in the grounds. Next, I introduce a new zone, which is a water mushroom zone. Similar to the way they got to the trees, the player can go up to the mushroom and collect these extra coins over here. Once that's done, next we are introduced to the pipe area. There's plenty of walking enemies with a new mechanic of having to wait. There are certain areas where the enemy will block the path, so you will have to jump, for example, in this corner, wait for the enemy to pass, jump in here, wait for them to pass again, and jump out. And that will lead you to the end of the level. All of this was created with the single tile palette we created at the beginning of the game. I would like to remind you all that there are several tile sheets in here with different aesthetics that you can grab and use for your own games, and highly encourage mixing them as well. Now, where does this level lead? Level 2 is just a little congratulations with the ending of the level. that will bring you back to the menu. A couple edits that I had to make along the way. One of them being the collider of the player. The collider was a little too high, so it would get stuck on things that they were their height. So for example, they wouldn't be able to walk in under the tree. So I lowered the collider of the body. Another thing we had to change was the initialization of the player prefs. As the game was now, a brand new game would load in with the player prefs being zeroed out because we never assigned them a value. So the music and sound effects were muted every time the game turned on. We fixed this by checking if the player prefs were set, and if they were not, we set them to 1, and that will be the baseline from which the player can edit them. Now, as I said, you do not have to follow this example. You can create a multitude of different types of levels and game types with this kind of platforming system. You could create challenging single small room platformers like Celeste or Super Meat Boy. You could create longer side-scrolling levels, kind of like Shovel Knight or Mario Bros. Games. Or you could even create Metroidvanias, where the end level goal is actually just a teleporter between different rooms, such as Hollow Knight and Ori and the Blind Forest. You can create anything you want. I would highly encourage you to first paper prototype your ideas to see how viable they are. Paper prototyping is basically drawing your level out on paper. That's how initially the Mario Bros. Games were designed. I will link a video of that below. So I'm looking forward to seeing the different creations you come up with and how you will remix these ideas into your own. Before we call it an end here, there is 2 more things we will discuss. One of them is creating settings for our executable, and the second one is creating the executable. Let's go into Edit, Project Settings. We can slot it in here next to the inspector, extend it a little bit, and we're going to look for our player toggle. The player will control what the game looks like when it's played as an actual game rather than in the editor. So a couple settings you can set. You can set your company name. You can set the name of the game, so that's what's gonna pop up when the window of the game is open. It will say Pixel Quest up there. You can set the version, so as you're changing the game over the time, you can actually update the version with different changes. You can set the default icon, which will be the image that will be starting the game. And then you have different settings for where the game will play. The first toggle is the computer desktop, so Windows, Mac, and Linux, how they will look. So you can see this will be the icon that's shown. You can change it in here. You can set the resolutions. You can tell if it will be windowed or full screened. And you can choose a splash image. Splash image will be the logo that shows up before the game. So as you most likely seen, every game has the company logos. This is where you can add yours. Likewise, if you are creating a WebGL, you can do the same settings here. They can be different between the two of them, or they can be the same. Once you have your game put together, make sure to go into build settings. Make sure that all the levels you created are in this scene. We can actually turn off the test scene. We don't want that to be built. That's just extra noise for the game to code. And then you will choose your platform. Currently I have it set to build of WebGL. That will allow me to upload it to the web, and you can play it directly from a browser. However, you can also switch it to a desktop, such as the Windows. You can click switch platform. This will take a minute to change the settings, and once you build it, you will have an executable file that you can run off any Windows computer. If you want to have different ones, you will have to switch between Macs and Linux, but this will let you create a game that you can share with your friends. That's gonna be pretty much it for the game development. If you stuck through the whole thing, congratulations, you made your first game. I hope to see some of your creations come to light on Steam or Itch.